cover today. First off, how many people here have been in my session before with agency intelligence? Awesome. By raise of hands, how many of you are owners, agency owners? Perfect. How many are producers? Okay. Perfect. So this session today is understanding agency intelligence and understanding your business. And every one of your agencies is a little different. Your focus in your agency is a little different. My purpose today is twofold. One is actually threefold. One is to start having you think a little differently about your business. Oftentimes as agencies, and quite frankly as a business owner, we spend so much time in our business and not enough time on our business. We're so heads down, taking care of it every day, that we don't have time to step back and go, wait a minute, is what I'm doing actually efficient? Am I doing it the best for my business? And so one of my purposes is for you guys to think differently about your agency, and what are those things that maybe you ought to be focusing on that you're not today. Second purpose today is to give you some tools to help you. And I will tell you right now, the tools that we're going to show you aren't complete, if you will. There's things that we recognize are lacking. We recognize that we're going to be continuing to add to it over time. And so that brings me to my third point is that I want the feedback. I want things that are working or not working, or why they're not working, things that you would like to see. Recognizing that sometimes an agency has things that are like, everyone would need this, and sometimes it's like, well, maybe. But there are definitely things that everyone does need. And so we want to hear everything. We want to hear the feedback so that we can get better and we can help you guys move forward. So that's my third purpose, my three purposes with this class today. So feel free to speak up. There are some microphones that have been strategically placed. And so if you have a question, if you could ask for a microphone, and that way the people that are remote can hear the question directly, and we can go that route. Am I missing anything else? Awesome. So we're going to cover several things in this class today. We're going to talk about some important dates and how they're used. We're going to talk about key performance indicators. We're going to talk about a little bit about cleaning up your data and how to keep your data clean, and we're not going to do any of that in that order. So with that, let's talk about KPIs. So key performance indicators. These are indicators in your agency that are key to the performance of your agency, right? They are things that help you know how your agency is doing, whether in whatever area you're looking at. We're going to talk about what some of those key performance indicators are, but then also what drives them. And it's important to recognize that data drives key performance indicators. They are what drive reports. Without good data, you're not going to get good reports. So first off, types of key performance indicators. These are 4 different types. There's lots, and you may probably have your own that you're already looking at. But things like book of business KPIs. How is your book of business growing? With which carriers? With what personalized versus commercial versus life health, whatever that might be. But with that book of business. You've got KPIs like your new business. How much new business is coming in, and what areas are they coming in from? Are they coming in on personal or commercial? Are you doing enough? Cross-selling becomes your book rounding. But that new business KPIs. Customer retention. I'm bringing a lot of new business, but it's going right out the back door next month. That's not working for you. So we've got to be looking at retention in your agency and different ways to retain and gather that information. And then obviously the book rounding. And I talk to agencies all the time they're great at selling one particular line of business, but they write the business and that's it. And they don't even ask them about, I'm writing their auto. What about their home, renters? What about their other lines of business they're not even thinking about? And that's where those KPIs come into play as well. And again, we're going to talk more in agency intelligence on how you can tease out some of this information. And as we do that, there's going to be aha moments going, yeah, but I also want to get, and those are the things we want to hear. Okay? As I said earlier, it's data that drives key performance indicators. And data, in this case, most of the data is really key around dates. And this is, if you start using a date incorrectly, well, then your agency intelligence reports will reflect incorrect results. So you won't get what you're looking for. And so what I want to do is talk a little bit about this, some of these important dates. The effective date. We all know what an effective date is. It's pretty straightforward. It's the specific date that the policy goes into effect for this term, okay? And the expiration date is its complementary piece, is when that coverage ends for the policy for this term. That's also the date that the policy will renew if it's a renewing policy, right? So those are pretty straightforward. The next one is where we have next two is where we have a little bit of aha moments for some agencies. That inception date. The inception date is the original effective date of a policy with a given carrier. So for instance, if I'm writing with carrier A and I write the policy and it's in effect for 2 years and then I rewrite it with carrier B, that inception date resets to carrier B. It does not stay with what it was with carrier A. And that again, because reports are driven off of that. Any questions on inception date or concerns on inception date? Awesome. Everyone a little comatose from lunch. Anyone get some of those churros? Oh yeah. Awesome. So the sold date. Sold date is the date the policy was originally sold. It's not when it goes into effect. It's when it was originally sold. And we'll talk a little bit later why that's important. But we had agencies always wanting to be able to put together incentives for their producers and say, hey, if you hit a certain number of new policies this month, we're going to give you a bonus. Yeah, but if we only track it on the inception date, they typically won't get credit for those that they sell at the end of the month, because typically the ones that sell at the end of the month go into effect the next month. And so that sold date is when you actually sell that piece of business, not when it goes into effect. Personal lines, oftentimes it's the same date. I mean, you get someone who walks in off the street, say, I just bought a new car, I need insurance. And as agents, you bind it right there on the spot, and they walk out the door, and they're happy campers, and your sold date and inception date are the same date. Conversely, though, you've got that commercial policy that they are, it's going to renew 2 months from now, and they come in and you're working with them and you sell that policy today, but it doesn't go into effect for 2 months. That's where your sold date and your inception date are going to be very different. And the status date is probably the most confusing thing in CMS, and I wish it would go away. Someday it will, hopefully. It's really, but as it's defined here, is the date that the current status took effect. So for example, if the status is canceled, it's the cancellation date.
And that's really the only important one.
And that's really the only important one. All the other ones really don't matter. I mean, if the policy renews, it is in a renew status, it's technically when it renewed, but the effective date is also the same date at that point. If it's new business, it's also the effective date as well. So it's really the only thing that matters is if it cancels that status date. But again, those dates are really important. If you start using dates and say, well, we just want to piggyback and we're going to put something else in the inception date, or we're going to put something else, change the status date to something else, it's going to screw up all your agency intelligence reports and you're not going to get what you're looking for. So it's really important that you use the dates appropriately. So possibly. So, and going back to what Paul said, the status date really only means something if the policy cancels. That's why I personally want to get rid of it. If you do an endorsement, depending on how it's done, your status could change to active, and then your status date will reflect when it went active, but that doesn't mean anything. I mean, it has no meaning on anything, which is the reason why I think it should go away. I think it should completely disappear unless it's canceled, and that'll be a future version of CMS, hopefully. Yes. Oh, actually, let's microphone there, and then they'll bring it up to you. Sorry.
Hello? Yeah.
Yep.
Does the download overwrite the sold date?
No, it does not. It should not. If you're seeing that, let me know, but no, it does not. Question up here?
Yeah, we don't get the sold date does not come in the down.
Right here.
Right here?
Right here.
Is there anywhere that will show, like, when the policy was just originally written to the agency, like how long the client has been with the agency? Or do you just have to click back to policy 1 and look at the...
So the answer to that is yes and yes. First off, if you do click back, so the question, can you see when the policy was, when the client was originally
wrote
written?
that line of business.
Yeah, and you can see it in two places. One is you could find the oldest policy on there. The other way of doing it is on the client tab, on the policies tab, there's a client since field. And that's doing that work for you. It's actually going back through all the policies and finding the oldest policy. Now, if you came from another management system and that customer was still in existence, it may or may not be accurate depending on if all the data came across. But in theory, that's the date.
You can also drop down that and put, there's another couple of fields in there. One is the line of business, and I could sort that by line of business and date, and the line of the date would pop up to the. No, there's another one, but anyway, yeah.
Okay. So one other thing that a lot of people don't know is by default, CMS, to piggyback on what you asked, by default, CMS, when you load a client, loads the contacts tab. And really, if as a servicing a customer and you really want to know this data, which is I want to know how long they've been with me and I want to know their total annualized premium for all active clients, because that tells me really what's the worth of this, the value of this customer. You can actually change CMS so that it will default to this tab. And then you can do that by going up to user preferences. And right here under default client tab, change that to policies. And that way that tab will actually come up as a default when you do a search for that client. So we have a question way in the back.
Just to confirm, the inception date, if you rewrite a policy, is the same inception date of the original policy sold, or
No.
it reflects that effective date of the new rewritten policy?
It reflects the effective date of the new policy. Yep, yep. Awesome. So how many of you guys have gone into agency intelligence? Does everyone know how to get there? Does anyone not know how to get there? And don't be bashful. Okay. So on reports, agency intelligence, and this comes up. We're going to walk through and we're going to talk about each of these KPIs and really how they're derived. Because again, if you know where the data is coming from and how we get the numbers, it's going to help you understand what's important in your agency anyway, so where we're getting the numbers from. It's an important aspect of this. So you've got customers is obviously the total number of customers, active customers. An active customer is defined as a customer with one or more active policies. I know on the client tab, there is this thing called client status. It does not use that. It's truly a customer with one or more policies in force is defined as an active customer.
Unfortunately, the client status is just a manually set thing. You can do whatever you want to it. It doesn't. There's no reporting on it.
And for those that are interested, about 3 years ago at a HUG, we were talking about changing it so that it was automated, so it would really follow this rule. And I got a whole bunch of agents that pushed back at me and said, whoa, 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 we want it manual. And I was like, really? So we're still debating that one. We may make a setting for those agencies that want it manual, but anyway, it's kind of interesting. Awesome. So second piece is a customer is defined as where a client type is set to customer and the client file is not archived. And I stress that because if you start using client type and say, well, you know what? We're going to put all of our commercial lines under client type of other and all of our personal lines under client type of client, and you start, agency intelligence isn't going to work because it's not going to find those. It's only looking for client type of customer. That make sense? Awesome. And then a policies in force is policy that has an active status. Any questions so far? Okay, so policies per customer is really straightforward. The average number of policies in force for each active customer, and it's a simple math. You take the policies in force divide it by the active customers, and you get policies per customer, right? Pretty straightforward. Why is this important in your agency? Tells you how well you're rounding out. And as you start breaking that down, and something you'll notice right off that you can group this, let me pull this up real quick, you can group this by producer. And you can start saying, you know what, I've got producer A over here who they've got 2.2 policies per customer, but I've got producer B over here and they're at 1.0. Okay, I've got some training I need to do. I need to start looking at how we can get them really offering those other lines of business and rounding out that book. So many times we talk to agencies and they're so focused on that one line of business that they focus on, and they're trying to get more business, but they've got this plethora of customers that they already have that they need to make use of. And they can start, again, rounding out that book of business.
I call it their gold mine.
The gold mine. So as you look at these reports, you've got
Sean.
this. Yes, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to reiterate about the gold mine. We actually have our CSRs cross-sell. So I was going to say that you could sort it by CSRs as well. I guess you were getting to that. I might have jumped the gun.
No, that's
But
exactly
anyhow,
where I was going.
that's exactly how we use it. So we monitor our CSRs, how well they're doing cross-selling, because their policies per customer should go up.
Yeah. You know, in this report right here, you can see you've got this person here sitting at 3, which is, this is a demo database, so it's kind of weird, but you've got those that are sitting at 1, and that's where you know you've got to do some training. And so again, as you look at how to create efficiencies, you've got to break it down maybe by office. Maybe you've got one office that's doing a lot better a job than another office. But that's where you've got to really spend some time looking at these reports and drilling down, understanding what they mean, and then what those action items that come out of them are. Awesome. So next we've got premium per customer. Again, pretty straightforward. Take all the active, average premium of all policies in force for all active customers. Pretty easy math on that one. Any questions on premium per customer? Okay. One of the questions that we get asked a lot has to do with, and I'm sure it's going to come up, so I'm going to prevent it right now. Is but I want to see how these are changing historically. I want to know from a year ago to today, where are we at? It's coming. It's not in the system today, but if you'll notice in CMS, we've added about a year ago, we added this history tab on a policy. And with that history tab, we're actually keeping track of rate changes. The purpose for that is so that we can actually expand agency intelligence to start reporting historically on what it was a year ago versus what it is today. Yes?
So each month, I take a screenshot.
Yep.
And I copy it into a OneNote, and it's there historically. So I have that for the last 36 months, and I see how it changes every item, how it changes month by month over the course of time.
Yeah.
And until you get that
right
up and running.
And that's a great workaround for now, is to do exactly that. And you've got to be diligent about it, because it's got to be the first of every month or same day every month to do that. And it is coming, but until we have that, that's a really good workaround to do that. Yep.
I saw somewhere yesterday that there's a way to compare the current renewal to the old policy somewhere. Is that part of this class, or?
Nope, that's not part of this class, but that's that's actually part of the AL. There's an AL3 compare, and you can actually compare one download that comes in from the prior download and actually see the differences.
That's actually doing it one customer at a time.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, we've got. Whoops. I do have a clicker, don't I? Look at that. Nope, don't look at that. There we go. Okay, so customers added. Again, pretty straightforward. This is customers were all active, expired, or canceled policies that have an inception date in the selected date range. And it really should not be all. We're all. Actually, the oldest one. regardless. Again, it's based on the inception date. And that's why the inception date is very important. So one of the things that happens a lot of times is we talk about policy retention. And policy retention is important in certain aspects, but sometimes we get too hung up on it, where we're too focused on policy retention, and it's really about retaining the client. I may not be able to retain a policy because I have to rewrite them in order to keep that client. There are the needs for policy retention as well. And go ahead.
So I spend all of my time in agency intelligence. Outside of that, I don't work inside the business. It's agency intelligence, it's our sales pipe drive, and it's management. So I spend an ungodly amount of time here, and I'm going to say that the most important thing isn't customer retention, it's premium retention.
Good point.
So
Thank you.
at some point, I'm going to ask you to figure out a way to give us, when we click on retention, I'm going to ask you, I want to know what last year's premium retention is, what the premium retention was for the last 6 months,
Right.
and what the premium retention was for the last quarter, and I want to be able to sort it by account manager so that I can see if the improvements that we're making with our account managers are taking effect, or do we need more training?
I like that. I love that. That's awesome.
That is part of what our plans
absolutely.
are.
Got a question way in the back.
We're new since December of 19, so this is probably an us issue, but I'm just wondering if it's an obvious us issue. Our customers added and customers lost are almost identical, as are our policies sold and our policies lost. So is there something that would, in the way they renew, or something that we're screwing up?
Yep. So, thank you. That's a great segment of what we're going to talk about next. So, what happens oftentimes, and it's actually further down. So when we get into policies sold, hold the thought till we get to policies sold, and I'll address that issue because there is some workflows that you need to follow in order to make that work. Whoa, I love clickers, but this is getting out of control. Okay, awesome. So we'll come back to that. If I don't, will you remind me? Awesome. So customers added, we talked about that. Customers lost is very similar. It's customers whose last policy or policies canceled or expired within a selected date range, resulting in no active policies. Pretty straightforward, right? And then, of course, you've got the net change between the two. Hopefully that number is going up and not down. But as you pointed out, it's really about the premium, and that's what we need to get in there and focus on that. So customer retention. This is an interesting one. It goes right along with customer lifetime. This number is the customer retention along with and customer lifetime. They go together, and they're used for different purposes. First off, what would be a really, really good customer retention number in an agency? 100%. So, which means you've been in business about 2 weeks, and you've written, okay, and you've written your mother, and she has not canceled yet. But she, awesome. 92 to 94%. 92, 94% would be really good. Yeah. So this is something that you should be looking at is what is retention in your agency? But not only that, not as an agency, but you can break that down by producer. You can break that down by office and start really realizing where are you losing out on, where are you losing those customers? This is something that we do at HawkSoft as well. We actually use CMS to manage our customers. And this is something we have to watch as well. So yes, your records are in our database, and we look at these same things. The customer retention percentage kind of catches people sometimes. This is the number of active customers today minus the number of customers added in the last 12 months divided by the number of active customers 12 months ago. And some people go, where did that formula come from? For those people that don't do math, they kind of scratch their heads. I know I did for a while. Let me give you a quick analogy that really helps with people. We've all went to high school, hopefully. We all went to high school, right? And you've got your freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year, right? So if you have 400 kids in high school, and you have 100 in each grade, right? 100 in 9th grade, 100 in 10th, 100 in 11th, 100 in 12th grade. So number of active students, we got 400 students. Number of students added in the last 12 months. Well, we added 100 because we got a new batch that came in, right? So we take 400 minus 100, and we get 300. And then we divided by the number of active customers 12 months ago. Well, 12 months ago, we still had 400. So now we get 300 divided by 400, and you get a 75% retention rate. And if you think of high school, that's exactly what would happen. Every year, 100 students go out, 100 students come in. So you got a 75% retention rate. Yes?
Now, another one to watch, and we're going to add this to this, is first-year retention. Because first-year retention is also important, but it's not that same number. And it's a number that we are going to add, and it is an important number. In other words, did I write something that just immediately went out right out the door again?
Yep. Yep. So one of the questions that we get asked, especially when you guys get back at home and you're looking through this whole long report and you say, wait a minute, what did Sean say about that? What was that formula? What was the explanation of what constitutes whatever these things are? Right up here, there's I actually have to load the program. There we go. Right up here, there's a button called What's This? And that's what's this? If you click on it, it pulls up our help system, and it's contextual to what you were on. And it's going to tell you, here's your customer retention. And quite frankly, my slides came right out of the help system. I literally copied and pasted most of the stuff. And so everything we're going through today is right in the help system. If you come up to customers added and click what's this, you're going to see exactly what we were looking at with the same information. So that's something so you don't have to be, if you're frantically scribbling, you don't have to do that anymore. You can just pull it up when you get back. Something else to recognize is, let's look at, as you pull up those customers lost, and let's say we've got, I want to know who it was we lost. I actually want to reach out to them, or maybe as customers add, I want to reach out to them. Anytime in these reports, you can hover over any of these numbers, and you'll notice that it becomes a hand. At any point, that means that you can drill down and you can see who are those 15 customers that were added back in 2021 that don't have a CSR, and maybe there's some data cleanup we need to do. And I can double click on that, and I can actually pull up those customers in that list. And then the beautiful part is I can double click on that first one, and it will pull it up right in the program, and I can literally page down, and it's actually walking down this report. So if I actually put CMS on one side and the report on the other side, what you'll actually see is, can you see it? Oh, it's washed out, isn't it? Yeah. You can't actually see it, but
You can see it.
You can see it? Okay. So it's actually walking down that report. So that's one way you can actually work a report and actually follow up and look at what's going on with those customers. Yes, the next and previous button do that as well. That's correct. For those mouse users. Beautiful. So customer lifetime. Again, the customer lifetime formula is kind of wonky. Some math person figured it out somewhere. It was not me. I'm not that smart. 1 divided by 1 minus the retention rate. One of the things that we talked about yesterday in the class is why would I ever use this? How would you guys ever use the customer lifetime? When it comes important is when it comes to selling your agency. It helps evaluate what your agency is worth. And so right now, if you're starting out, it probably is not going to be that important. In fact, it may not even be that accurate for a couple of years until everything settles out. But as you get closer to retiring and you want to sell your agency, that number is going to be a factor in that valuation. You sure?
Yeah, no, I'm not sure. So if you have seasoned producers, so retention's just going to track the last year. Customer lifetime will track lifetime, right? So I think there's a difference there if you sort it by producer to see who's getting really sticky business over a lifetime. So I think there's another reason for that as well.
I like it. Yeah, awesome. Right next to you, Paul.
Has there ever been any thought to adding to the group buy breakdown? So you've got producer, CSR, and office, like breaking in, the application type so you can see commercial lines, personal lines,
That was
employee benefits.
yes. In fact, that was we talked a lot about that yesterday, and that's definitely necessary. We need to do that.
In fact, if I get my way, we're actually going to be able to filter that on the left side and look at that on the left side of that screen. Go back to agency intelligence, Sean. There you go. I want to be able to filter up there. Above that, I want to say what policy types or commercial or personal lines, life, health, those three things I want, because I want to look at those three things separately.
So I'll tell you right now, and we showed this in the presentation yesterday morning. Agency intelligence is actually actively being redone to run out of a browser, and it's kind of fun because the database work has actually been completely done on it. The UI work is done on it. We're in the process of connecting the two right now, and then once we get the baseline, then we're going to start adding in a lot of these other features you guys are talking about. So it's I'm very excited about that moving forward.
Are we able to break this down for agents to use on their own, or would they only have access to everybody?
So the question is, are we going to be able to break that down for agents? So agents can use it. So there's two, yes. So in fact, that's one of the things they've already done on the agency intelligence is that you can set it so you're only seeing the policies that you are a producer on are the only ones that will show up in agency intelligence. However, there's also been a request that we had not thought about from yesterday was we want to be able to remove all of monies out of this. So if I can give it to CSR and exclude, they can see number of policies, they just can't see premium. I love that idea because that's something that we don't necessarily want to share necessarily with the CSRs, depending on your agency. So, yeah. Okay. We've got no active auto, no active home, no active personal umbrella, and yes, I recognize that the commercial lines are not on there. They will be at some point. But for now, we've got those that are no active auto. So again, it's an active customer that has an active personal lines policy in force, but there's no active auto on there. And this really goes to your, again, that cross-selling, making sure that you're rounding out your book of business.
Now another caveat to that is the fact that on no personal umbrella, sometimes your homeowners has an umbrella endorsement in it, and we're going to tease that out so that we can get that for you too.
And see, we're airing all of our dirty laundry, isn't that great? So the other thing that that's not on there that you'll find a little frustrating is that let's say you find one that has no active home or no active auto, and you work with that person and you literally can't, you don't get that business. Well, they're going to stay on your report. Right now, there's no way of marking it saying, nope, I've tried. Let's pause this for a year or something like that. There's none of that's on there yet. Okay, so jumping down to policies, and this is where policies in force, pretty straightforward, right? Total number of policies that are currently active, then total current premium for the policies. It's pretty straightforward. What was your question back there again?
Premium added.
Okay, we're not there yet. Awesome.
Yeah, hang on, John.
Sure. Oh, I have something on the slide too. Go ahead.
On the no active personal umbrella in that, would there be a way to add a, like for instance, we're tracking right now and doing a big push with earthquake, and so I'd love to have like a no active earthquake and be able to customize some of that by adding that in. Is that something in the future potentially?
I love it. Yeah. Can I have you, just for the sake of it, can you send us a suggestion on that so we don't lose it?
Absolutely.
That'd be great. Would we want the same for flood?
Correct.
What other lines of business would you want to see on the personal side? So you got earthquake, flood.
Wind and hail, depending on the state.
Wind and hail, maybe life,
Life, yeah.
health. Yeah, I'm hearing no. Don't go there.
I mean, it would be great because it is so different sometimes regionally. If you could even select, right, which ones that
Yeah,
select which ones that you wanted for your agency, because like in California, earthquake's obviously relevant, but that's not nationwide. So
right. I love it. Question back here.
As part of the accounting overhaul, is there going to be any revenue KPIs?
Yes, they're coming. They're coming. So you're talking about commission? Yes. Yep.
We actually want to make this so that depending upon who's looking at it, just like if you want to have a CSR, you can look at it, that CSR can see one thing, and then if it's an owner, he can see something else, those kind of things. And so that's, those are very relevant, yes.
So as we look at the policy KPIs, one thing to note is that some agencies don't, they work with a lot of carriers that don't do downloads. And so they're manually entering everything into the management system. And it's a pain sometimes to enter all of those premiums for every line item. And they're like, I just want to be able to enter it in one place. So you have two choices. One is you can grab the first coverage and enter it onto the first coverage, which isn't really accurate. The other thing you can do is leave off all the premium on every coverage and simply enter it into your quoted premium. The agency intelligence, if the quoted rate is 0, it will use the
Quoted premium on the GPI
on
screen.
the GPI screen. Yep, on the GPI screen. So it'll use that. So for those agencies that deal, again, with a lot of the manual entered policies, it's a way of handling it without doing a lot of work.
So I find that our biggest issue with policies in force is expired policies.
Yes.
Is there a way that maybe on the home screen it'll give you year-to-date expired policies so I don't have to continuously create a report? I'm finding that's when I speak to other agents, that's the one report they're always creating is an expired policy list.
Well, you mean they're recreating the every time? You know, you can memorize those policies. I mean, those reports.
Yeah,
But you're wanting something on here where it's like, hey, I have a cancel report or a loss report, but you want to
Right,
I want an expired report.
because I want to see it at 0, you know.
Yeah.
I don't want to see so many.
Yeah.
When I go in, it's just, and there's so many different reasons that lead to a policy being expired, and it's so important to these numbers.
So it's kind of a data cleanup thing. I mean, am I hearing that right? Your expired
it's
should be
just-
really close to 0, if not 0, because
Right.
typically a policy either cancels or, unless of course it's an event policy or something like that, but oftentimes it's
You're doing it once a month, sometimes you're a bit late in the process if it's earlier in the month. You know?
right.
So it's just
Yeah.
something that it's right in front of you to see.
Oh, I know what we were going to do with that. We were actually going to show the number of expired policies.
That's what he's talking about.
Oh, okay.
Yep, that's
Yes,
exactly what
yeah,
he's talking
that is on the list.
We've got premium per policy. Again, this uses the current rate, or if it's 0, uses the quoted rate, the quoted premium to come up with the premium per policy. We've got this next one, and this is where, going back to your question in the back, so policies sold versus policies added versus policies lost. First off, we're going to talk about policies sold. Policies sold uses the sold date. And this really goes back into if I'm trying to have an incentive for my producers. I want to be able to track by policies sold in a month. I want to say, hey, if you get 30 deals in, I'm gonna kick you some kind of bonus. We use the sold date because, again, that inception date, it may not go into effect for a couple months. And so that sold date is what we track, allows you to track on that.
One of the other caveats on this is the fact that now, if you rewrote a policy, you canceled this policy and rewrote it, is that a policy lost? No, it's not. And we have a mechanism in here to show that so that that doesn't show up as a lost policy. And the other one, the
So-
one that you rewrote it to, doesn't show up as a new policy.
So that's a great segue, because that's what we're going to talk about next, exactly how to do that. So, and that goes back to your question, is why are they exactly the same?
You have a question in the back.
Yes.
Yeah, I apologize. I've only been with you guys since April, but we just started using the commission. I've been using your commission reports to pay my producers. Is there any way, we write a lot of E&S business. Is there any way to create a report or something maybe on here that would tell me when a policy renews that the commissions have not been put in manually or have not been brought in, or is there any way to, because
Not at this time. We're looking at that as we rewrite the commission program. We're looking at that to say, hey, this is a new policy, but the commissions haven't been paid, or they haven't been reported, or something. Yeah.
okay, so that there's some kind of red flag that would tell me to go in and figure, because otherwise all my commissions are going to be wrong, unfortunately.
Yeah.
He'll just have to
Because
manually
you're trying to
create
pay commissions on that, and now you're gonna get your payment to your producers are gonna be wrong.
Yeah, or if I have E&S business, and, I mean, again, some of it's data conversion problem is, those premiums might not be 100% correct, coming from RPS, and I've got to manually put them in. I don't know if they've been put in correctly, there's just, okay, thank you.
So I believe there is a way of getting the report on the commission side, but I would encourage you to talk to one of our commission experts on that, because I will tell you, and whatever I tell you will be wrong.
Okay, thank you.
For producer commissions.
I run that report, and the way you would find out if it's missing commissions is when you run a report and you see a blank there. And then you have to go back and fix it, because quite often, sometimes it'll get missed.
Thank you.
So going back to the policies added versus policies lost. Policies added is count all active, expired, or canceled policies that have an inception date in that range, where the policy source is not rewrite, and that's the key. And that goes back to what happens sometimes when the tendency is that we want the policy source to be on the new policy when we rewrite a policy. Our tendency is to want the source to be what the source of the new policy was, to be the same as the source of the prior policy.
Yeah,
So-
but what if I rewrote this so many times?
That's why I'm going. That's why
I
exactly.
know.
That's the
I'm
tendency.
doing this for you because it's different. But it's, let's say my original policy I wrote 10 years ago, and I've written 5 or 6 policies from them, and the original one is Yellow Pages. You think that's relevant now?
So with that, we got to make sure that when go ahead.
But you're talking about the source.
Yeah, source.
How you
Source.
got that business
Yep.
original. Yeah,
Yep.
it was the original way of getting the business.
Yep. So as you start looking at when you go to duplicate a policy, so for example, you go to rewrite a policy with another carrier. When you rewrite the policy, that through the internal, I think it's duplicate/rewrite, it automatically marks the source on that new policy as rewrite. Don't change that. If you're changing that to a different source, that's going to screw up your policies added report, because it's going to look like that's a new policy, and the reality is it's not. It's a rewrite of an existing policy.
And
And then
also,
conversely-
a lot of your agencies, you don't pay new commissions on those either. You don't. You still want to pay renewal commissions, and there's a commission rule that handles that.
And then conversely, when you lose when you rewrite the policy, oftentimes we'll mark it as canceled, but you should be marking it as replaced, because you've actually replaced the policy with another policy, and that will ensure that your policy's lost report shows up correctly. If they truly cancel and the business goes away, yeah, that's a lost policy. But if you've rewritten it with another carrier, then you need to mark that original policy that's been canceled as replaced.
If we've been doing that incorrectly, how long does that take to clean it up? Do we just have to wait till it cycles through for another year, or sir?
Yeah, you could also, there's also some data replace that you could do on that.
Yeah.
through some data replace.
And there's a manual on that, and that's one part in that one section in there on how to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
If when you check that box to say that there's a policy that's rewritten, if another box popped up with, which policy you rewrote it from, and that would write back to the original.
So just so we're all on the same page. So what you're talking about is, well, we'll go on the prospect actually. Right here, policy was rewritten from a prior policy. And so that's that checkbox. What that checkbox actually does is it marks the source. All it's actually doing is marking the source as rewrite. That's actually all it's doing, but it's doing it for you, so it helps you with that process. But in your answer to your question is you would like this, so if you check that, you would mark which one it was rewritten from, and then it would automatically know not to include the prior policy. I like that.
And then, but then it also has to go through your process. If you actually started this process by re-quoting that original policy and you duplicated it first, then that's automatically going to happen.
Right. Yep.
The one thing that I found that we have trouble with is tracking.
Hey, guys, we need you to talk into the mic because we're recording. That's why we need that.
The one thing that I see that we have trouble with is tracking over the lifetime of a policy. If we've remarketed them 2 or 3 times, being able to see which carrier and where we started premium-wise to where we are today, and when we're adding a new policy, is there an easy way to track that?
And that's what you'd like to be able to see a history. It was with this carrier, then it went to this carrier, went to this carrier, and that's awesome. One of the challenges with that is, what's that?
Policy screen.
Yeah, one of the challenges with that is especially as a policy gets rewritten, and sometimes it's with one line of business with one carrier, another line of business with another carrier, and the next one you actually combine them on the same, and so that it causes some challenge there, but I can see that. One thing that Paul pointed out was that you can get a look at policies in general on this policy screen, and especially if you were to add in, so if you right-click on this and say customize columns, you can add in the lines of business.
Right on top, you missed it on top.
Sorry, let me slow down again. So if you right-click on the header and say customize columns, and then you can add in lines of business as a tab. You can also add like application type in there, and that adds columns to this list, and you can actually move those columns and put them, wherever you want them, and that way you can see, and then you can sort by them, and so you can actually track. To some extent, you can see it that way as well.
Okay, I have a question regarding the status. Sometimes, and this could be a download permission, but I'll update a policy to rewrite or rewritten or replaced, and the download will overwrite it canceled, say like address changes, or let's say I replace that policy and change that status before that policy downloads. So it overrides what I've done. Is that a download permission?
No, so if it was marked as replaced, the download should not be replacing that unless you're on an old version of CMS. So are you on HawkSoft Online, or are you locally hosted?
We're locally hosted right now.
So you might and have you done the updates
I've
lately?
done the update, yeah. So let's say let's say I've rewritten a policy, canceled it online with travelers. In the policy, I'm changing it to replaced, entering the rewritten policy for the download the next day. Next day, come in, travelers downloads the cancellation. My status is now showing canceled when I updated it as replaced the day before. Shouldn't happen?
That should not happen.
So I should check my download permissions.
Nope, it's not going to download permission. Let's talk afterwards,
Okay.
because that.
It's specifically travelers is like one of the ones I know that does it, and they've been renewing as rewrites with that new program that they're.
Okay, let's touch base afterwards, because that should not be doing. There's no setting to do that. It simply shouldn't be doing that. Go ahead, Mike.
I just wanted to go back to this gentleman's comment on replaced and rewritten. I was sat in one of these classes a couple of years ago with some of my staff members, and we went back and corrected all of that. We ran a report. You can run a report of what's been done and go back and correct it. It made a 4-point difference in our retention ratio. It makes a big difference, and Cody knows correctly. and definitely reflects differently in your retention if you do it correctly.
So, just to answer her question, we had that issue with Progressive. Apparently, when a policy cancels and they don't pay the premium yet, and they keep the policy active for about 3 weeks or so after in New York, they didn't know how to identify that download to show that it was still active, so it was sending like an initial load, overriding our statuses.
Oh.
Right.
Okay.
It's an initial, so it might be an initial load causing it.
Whatever that file is called for the initial
Yeah.
load.
A sync.
A sync.
Sync.
So
Yeah,
they're
a
sending
sync
it
would
as
cause
A
that.
sync could cause
So
that.
they were sending it as a sync, which is overriding what we were doing.
And that might be the problem you're experiencing too.
I'll catch it when I run production reports, but it's just a few policies that'll slip through, which
Yeah.
I'm now aware of, so I'll catch off,
But
Yeah,
you should
we'll need
have-
to get
yeah.
get one of those copies. We'll have somebody talk to you and then get a copy to confirm that. Okay?
And then we can get that fixed.
So how did you guys fix it? How did you solve the problem?
I had to ask Progressive to stop sending us that file type. There was no way they weren't changing it. They didn't know how to recategorize it.
So you have to manually go in and.
I called them and asked them just to turn off that one file type download to stop sending us that one. So,
And it solved the problem.
yeah, we're great now.
There we go.
If I go to customize those fields, is that specific to each particular customer, or can I do that across, so it shows for everybody?
That is particular to your, to your user.
So
in
if
other words, so if you can go to all your other clients, it'll look exactly the same way. So if I go to a different client, it shows those columns are still there.
Perfect.
But if.
It's
you're
just
another-
for me.
It's just for you.
That's
Another
right.
user, they'll have to customize their own.
Thank you.
Yep. How are we doing? I think we're good. Okay. So again, to reiterate, when you replace a policy, we've got this checkbox on the GPI screen that when you do replace, oops, that's not the GPI screen. When you do replace that policy, and on the replacement policy, you need to make sure that box is checked that says policy was rewritten for a prior policy. Incidentally, and I think we've got a bug that got reintroduced. Oh, no, we didn't. Never mind. Okay. So you'll notice that what that does, by checking that box, you'll notice the source drop down. There's only one thing in it, and you can't undo it. It's now a rewrite. It's the only thing in the list. If I uncheck the box, then I get my full rewrite, or my full source list in there. And again, it's facilitating making sure that source gets set to rewrite. Yes?
Just to be clear, what should we be doing with the existing policy that we are rewriting? How should that be coded? Replaced?
Replaced.
Okay.
And that's a source, that's a status of replaced, not source of replaced.
Yeah, status.
Status is replaced.
Okay.
Yep. One of the things that some agencies do is they want to, they have a tendency to want to have a sub-source. So they want replaced because of, in some reason, and on the source. And so they've created their own sources that will say replaced dash blah. That's not going to work for agency intelligence. It's not going to work. It's looking for replace. That's what it's looking for. So.
Okay. Hold on.
They have sub-statuses. They want sub-sources.
Oh,
They want a source of replaced dash something. And
because you can get a report on the sub status.
Right.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So source doesn't factor in that. It's the status that make sure that it doesn't end up as the
So
new
on,
like coding it in as new business or something or expired on the old policy. It's the status, not the source.
Well, the status is on the old
So
policy.
it should be replaced, and we can have a substatus.
yes.
Yes.
Yep. 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 The other on the GPI screen, the other thing that's important is this annualized premium. This checkbox was added fairly recently in the last year, and this dictates whether a policy we should annualize that premium or not. If you're selling a bond and it's a 3-month bond and it's not going to renew, it's just at the end of 3 months it's dead. If that box is checked, it's going to throw off your your reports because it's going to annualize that on your reports, especially if you have one of those 1 or 2 day event policies. If anyone sold those hole-in-one policies, anything like that, an event policy, and that box is checked, your premium is going to look awesome, and it's going to be completely wrong.
I was killing it for a month.
Right? So make sure that you train on that. That box is really, really important for your reports. One of the challenges that we have, and this is that as owners, you guys care very much about this data, especially the annualized premium and that policy was written from repair policy. But your CSRs, if they're not responsible for those reports, they're like, who cares? And that's where you're going to have to do training. You're going to have to do follow-up to make sure that they are following proper procedures in order so that you get proper reporting.
Billy, what do you call that?
On what?
What he just said. When didn't get marked right, you're going to do what at the end? What's your last process?
Spot check.
Spot check.
Spot check.
Yep.
But you got to give yourself time to spot check. If you're busy doing a million other things, you're not going to make it a priority. So you got to make this a priority.
Yep. Beautiful. So, how much time do we have left? 2:42. So we have anywhere between 3 and 18 minutes.
You kind of own the joint, so if you want to extend it, I'm sure you're okay.
3 minutes sounds great. As we look at these at the policy KPIs, this is you have the ability to break these down by many different ways. So, for example, as I look at the premium, I can break this down by application type, and I can see how many policies I have for personal lines and what the premium is versus commercial versus life versus ag versus other, and I can see that report very quickly by application type. I can also break that down by line of business. Now, here's the caveat. Line of business, the way it works today is that if you have a package, the line of business is going to show up as a package. So I have 6 packages, or six policies that are a package policy. I don't know what lines of business those are. And so that's a caveat when using line of business. So helpful, but maybe not as helpful at this point. That's something with 6 we're hoping to be able to tease out and actually be able to give you a true breakdown. Unfortunately, one of the challenges we have with the line of business is that we have carriers that don't give us a good line of business breakdown sometimes. And so the data is pseudo-accurate.
Yeah, they'll throw all of the premium on the baseline of business and don't give me the breakdown for the individual parts of it. And of course, the other thing that we can do when you see that is talk to your carriers.
Yep. Obviously, break down by policy office and see how one office is doing versus another policy. You've got your policy titles. And that's very similar to your line of business, unless you've got your own customized policy titles. How many of you guys customize your policy titles? Okay. Can I ask why? What's the purpose for customizing them?
Because there's no other good way to track employee benefits.
Okay. Okay.
How about different types of auto policies? In other words, you have motorcycle, you have yeah, and that's what some agencies do too. So there's a question, there's right back there, Billy.
Thank you for waiting. The people online appreciate it.
No, we use them because other is the worst category ever in tracking business, because when my team doesn't know what to put in, they go to other and it's a mess.
So here's a question.
So in reality, I wish we could get rid of other in every aspect of HawkSoft because it's a really bad catch-all. Because it creates lazy employees.
Yeah. Good point. So here's a question, and this is from my knowledge. I've been asking around. Anyone here write aviation insurance?
Right, what?
Aviation?
Yes, I do.
What line of business does aviation go under?
It depends on the carrier that we're using. It's not a specific line for us, because we may have to bring in 10 different carriers in order to write the airport.
Okay.
So we don't have one specific line that just says aviation.
Gotcha.
So.
Okay.
There was a question back there.
We customize our policy titles for production reports because we do commercial, personal, we have all the lines of business. It's just easier to sort, but it is constant maintenance. And then when a policy downloads, it defaults to that auto piece. So it's kind of almost like a monthly continuous data overriding, working constantly in that. So I don't know, kind of debating on going back to the default statuses.
Gotcha.
Guys, and the things you have to remember as agents is if you're going in and you're changing all of this and you've got 1 or 2 staff, you just doubled or tripled their workload. Okay, if you're not using the defaults so that everything can come into the reports the way it's supposed to come into the reports, and you want to make it micro whatever so you can put it out there, and you got one girl who's doing all this, you just tripled her work. Please remember that.
I know there's not a lot of employee benefit specialist agencies, but having an application type of employee benefits versus life and health would be really helpful.
Yeah. That one's really easy to do. Medicare. Medicare is another one? For an application type? Did I hear that right?
He said Medicare.
So I said
Here you go.
but I don't input anything, so I don't know if I'm saying it in the right spot.
Okay.
Could you say that again, just for the people online?
We sell a lot of Medicare, but I don't know if application is where we need it. Policy type, maybe. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's awesome. So employee benefits, by the way, I can hook you up real fast on that one. I can add, it's a little data file, I add 1 line of code and you've got it. So
That would be awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
So I would say yes on the benefits, but employee benefits, and so we've broken out individual health and have policy company setups for all of those, and senior and have policy company setups for all of those. Okay. So that would be, and we break those tabs out differently.
Gotcha. Okay. Obviously, we can also break these down, these same components, down by source. And again, as an agency, if you're not tracking where you're getting your customers from, you should be. That's the number one thing you can do for efficiency to know, make sure you're spending the money where you need to be spending it. And it's not yellow pages. If your reports say yellow pages, we'll talk. And obviously, agent 1, 2, and 3. So again, those group buys become really important. And again, those drill downs where you can drill down and actually look at the underlying report underneath any one of those is just a click. Okay. Take a moment. Take a moment. This really goes back to it goes back to making sure that you are training your staff to make sure that data is entered in your staff in there correctly. Doing those spot checks becomes very, very important. And ensuring that the data that you've got processes in place. One of the things that is in the system today, if you're not making use of it, you should be, is required fields. You can go in under Setup General Configuration, and you can set what fields are required to have entered. And let me see if I can actually get at it, just so that we can see it. And of course, this database does not have permissions. Let me see if it's on my slide. Yes. So right here, here's a slide for it. But if you go under Setup, General Configuration, and then go to Required Fields, you can set what fields you want to be required or which ones you want to be warned on. So that when your customers are going, or your users are going, CSRs or producers are going in, you can say, you know what, this field is a required field. And again, to ensure that they're entering the data that you want entered. By default, I believe none of those are checked, and so it's kind of wide open. Yeah.
There you go.
Not really related to agency intelligence, but if there was a way we could get the NAIC code to link to the program, that would be awesome. Because a lot of times you have to select and take, Hartford, for example, and there's 20 different companies under there and 20 different NAIC codes. I don't know which one all relate
Right.
back to which carrier.
So it would require in policy company setup linking the program to the NAIC in there, right? Okay.
I was just going to say a temporary solution on that I learned from another class was when you're putting in the program, so let's say you put in your broker and then you're putting in all the writing companies for the program, listing the NAIC with that, so then when you're, it's technically it's going to list it twice, but then you're not going back to a separate list to try to match it up. You have it there.
Here we go. Because I promise you, people online want this solution.
Yeah, so when you're entering in the carrier on the program, you type in the carrier, say for example, it's Evanston, you just type in Evanston, and right behind Evanston, you write in the NAIC, which is 53322, whatever the number is, but it shows up twice on the certificate, but better than having to chase it down.
So just as a reminder, I don't know if you guys heard the term GIGO or GIGO, depending on who you ask, but garbage in is garbage out. Work with your staff, get those processes, get the process of what data needs to be filled out to get the data that you're looking for out on your reports. And then also, there's several classes, so all of these sessions this week have been recorded. There were 4 different classes on doing data cleanup in your agencies. If you did not take one of those classes or need a review, go check out Stephen Harrington gave classes on that. He's very skilled at doing data cleanup. I don't know if he still does, but I know for a while there he actually did side work where you could hire him to actually help your agency do that. And HawkSoft also had those services available as well. Yes?
Billy,
Yes, sir.
you are an investor in a lot of agencies.
Yes, sir.
And is the data important to you? Because you want to know that your investment is working.
It's everything. So let me give you a classic example. One of the standards, if I invest in an agency, is that I want every customer to have 4 lines of insurance. 4 lines, okay? If it's a personal lines agency, I want auto, home, umbrella, maybe life or whatever. When I go in, I look at that, and first thing I do is I pull their premium and I pull their policies by line. And then I break that down into revenue by policy, right? So I can say that the average umbrella brings in $200 in revenue. The average life insurance policy brings in $800 in revenue, whatever that is. And then when I do the whole matrix, I can look at that agency and say, you're leaving $6 million on the table. How am I leaving $6 million on the table? Because you only have a penetration of 1.8. The standard is 4. You're at 1.8. So if I break that down by policy, revenue by policy, you're leaving $6 million on the table. So no, I can't invest in your agency because you're not even running a good business. Or, yes, this is an agency I want to invest in because there's so much opportunity. So yes, data is extremely important. Long answer to a short question, but I like stories. Thank you, Paul.
Guys, we are essentially out of time. I just want some feedback on the last 2 days. How have the last 2 days gone for you guys?
Who we got? Here we go, right here.
Awesome. We want you to know how appreciative we are that you guys would take time out of your agencies, fly halfway or for some of you all the way across the country to come down here and spend this time with us. We appreciate the feedback as well. That's how we get better is for your guys' feedback. And so we appreciate everything you guys have done for us, just coming in and giving us that feedback.
Mr. Bowen's got some.
Yeah, I just want to say, I started with you guys in April, and I did it for a lot of reasons, and every reason I did it for was proven to me over the last 2 days. So you guys do what you're going to do, you say and you get it done. And everything I was promised about conversion, about data transfer, about all the issues were with the other company. It starts with easy and ends in links. But everything that's from that point forward, and just being here, I truly, as a very small agency owner who wants to grow, thank you both. Because, again, you say what you're going to do, you do it. And everything I've heard about HawkSoft is 100% true. So just this is a personal thing just to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Guys, have a wonderful, safe trip home. And Don't be strangers. Seriously, reach out, talk to any of us. We'd love to talk to you. So thank you. Is there one more session? Oh, there is one more session, 3 o'clock, right? Don't go home yet. One more session.